Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today is November 8th. We're moving through the last quarter of the year. That's important for a lot of reasons, which we'll get into. For those of you calling in for the first time, of course, we welcome you to the call, and we invite you to subscribe if the things we discuss here are of interest, and that you'd be kind enough to share this call with other like-minded individuals. I'm going to try to do a long call here today. It's a little bit frustrating. The phone won't stop ringing. From a business standpoint, that's a good thing, but from trying to conduct business, sometimes it's a little bit difficult. But I'll do the best I can to stay on point and focused during this call. So let's go ahead and get started. I have a lot of information I'd like to share with you. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves. We're sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant. And, of course, for those of us that hold currencies, the most relevant issue of concern is the window for the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar and these other currencies globally. I personally, and this is my personal opinion, believe that the dinar could revalue at any time, but it looks like January is going to be a drop-dead month for getting this done, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a minute. Before I get into the call, I'd like to do a little bit of review of some of the history of how we found ourselves holders of the Iraqi dinar, why we felt that this was going to be, even though it's, of course, a speculative investment, as all currency investments are, why we were of the belief that this would be a potential profit maker for all of us. And in my opinion, the reason this happened is because historically we saw what happened with the Kuwaiti dinar. Now, basically, the Kuwaiti dinar was sanctioned and then reinstituted over a relatively short period of time relative to the Iraqi dinar. And this had to do with the fact that, of course, Kuwait had been invaded by Saddam Hussein. When Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, the Kuwaiti dinar, which at the time was probably the strongest currency against the U.S. dollar, was put into a program rate. It was sanctioned. Now, the reason for that sanction was not to punish the Kuwaitis. The reason for that sanction was to ensure that Iraq could not pilfer the Kuwaiti dinar in order to exchange it. So the currency was sanctioned, put in a program rate, and within a matter of about 6 to 8 months, an international alliance of countries were able to remove Saddam and the Iraqi army, military, from Kuwait, and then the currency was reinstituted rather quickly. Of course, that's not the case in Iraq for a number of reasons. So the principle that a currency could be sanctioned and then reinstated is sound, but the circumstances regarding Iraq relative to Kuwait are completely and totally different. But things have changed since the early 90s, which contribute to the fact that the Iraqi dinar, once reinstituted and revalued globally, is going to dwarf any potential profit anyone made from the exchange of the Kuwaiti dinar. And I can say this with regard to the Kuwaiti dinar from personal experience. Now, the issues at stake here in Iraq was not just the removal of Saddam Hussein and the Sunni minority. I'm talking about global issues. Of course, we hear about the global currency reset. Very simply, what the global currency reset did was it eliminated or began the process of eliminating the hegemony of the U.S. dollar globally. And unfortunately, our own government participated in that effort and continue to this day. We could do a whole call on that, but we don't want to get into all of that. And the other thing is something called Basel compliance. Basel compliance, very simply, is the global transition from fiat-based currencies, that is currencies that are based on the respective government's valuation of the currency, as opposed to, in the Basel compliant scenario, currencies are going to be based on the known natural resources in those countries. In other words, they're going to be commodity-backed currencies. So what that does is it equalizes the currencies to the extent that they have real value. It's not artificial. An example of one of the reasons why this is important is China. China's claim to fame, really, was their ability, after joining the World Trade Organization, to artificially devalue their currency, allowing them to corner the global trade market. Well, they're not going to be able to do that, and they haven't been able to do that as much in the last few years as they've done in the past. That's why China's economy is in such bad shape, because they basically can't steal. And that is going to be the case with all nations now, because we're going to be talking about currencies that are backed. And, of course, in the case of Iraq, and for those of us that hold dinar, that's very good news. And I've discussed this on numerous occasions in the past, but in my opinion, per square mile, Iraq is the richest country in the world. And that doesn't even take into consideration the geopolitical issues and their geographic location relative to the trade routes between the East and the West. But I want to talk a little bit about the naysayers who continue to argue that we will not see the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar at any time. And, you know, the guys that have been saying for 20 years, hey, the dinar is going to revalue tomorrow, they irritate me. But the people that say, oh, it's never going to revalue, it's a scam, it's never going to happen, they irritate me too. So let's talk a little bit about why they say that the Iraqi dinar will not reinstitute and revalue anytime soon, because I think all of their arguments, in my personal opinion, are crap. The first argument is the money supply argument. We can't revalue the dinar because there's just too many dinar out there. Well, first of all, the number of dinar out there is because they created the provisional 3-0 currency. So by eliminating the 3 zeros, in and of itself, substantially reduces the money supply. But to the extent that the exchange of the dinar globally will create a money supply issue, it won't be for Iraq. It'll be for the other countries. Let's take the United States, for example. Let's walk through the process. You purchase 1 million dinar, provisional 3-0 currency, provisional dinar. If you're an Iraqi citizen, those currencies aren't worth 1 million because they'll take the 3 zeros off. But you go to the bank to exchange your currency. You invested in Iraq. So those 3 zeros are valid in that American bank. So you go to the bank with your 1 million dinar, and let's say that it's exchanged at the rate at which time the Iraqi dinar was sanctioned, which happened to be $3.22. Now, let's just use $3.22. I could argue that that's an extremely conservative number because the nation state of Iraq is in significantly better economic shape today than it was when it went into the program rate back in the early 90s. Back in the early 21st century years. And In addition to that, we've got 20 years of inflation. But let's say you go to the bank and you exchange your million dinar at 322. Well, that means you have approximately 3.25 million USD. Now, that does not affect the inflation rate of Iraq at all. That affects the inflation rate in the United States, particularly if they are, say, hypothetically 10 million dinarians that have on average 3 million dinar. That's 10 million Americans that are walking out of the bank with $10 million that didn't exist 5 seconds earlier. That's inflationary. But that's our inflationary issue, not Iraq's. But what happens to that million dinar? Well, basically it goes back to Iraq, for which we receive some benefit, and the currency is retired. The 3-0 provisional currency is retired because that country is now using their new national currency. So again, the money supply issue to me is a complete non-starter. Second issue is economic growth. The argument is Iraq has to realize real, sustained, year-in, year-out economic growth before they can reinstitute their currency. I happen to believe it's the opposite. So it's the chicken and the egg argument. Iraq's economic growth is going to be largely due to imports and exports, due to trade, due to the rebuilding of their infrastructure. And all of that has to be done with the dinar because they simply do not have sufficient U.S. dollar reserve, even though they have more now than they've ever had, to fund a 3-year budget, to fund the rebuilding of their electric grid, water services, roads, the 19 new cities that they're going to build. Can't happen unless they have a viable currency. So I don't buy the economic growth argument at all. The third argument is the most legitimate one. It's the corruption argument, having to do with corrupt pro-Iranian officials, corrupt individuals running some of the banks, exchange companies, etc. And the Prime Minister of Iraq, Soudani, has really dropped the hammer on these people. The arrests are in the hundreds, so they're moving quickly there. Last issue is, well, we can't have the revaluation without passage of the HCL, and at the current time we have a spike in the USD, so we have a disparity between the black market rate and the official rate of the dinar. Well, the hydrocarbon law, in order to actually implement it, not pass it, but implement it, requires a change in the exchange rate. So the fact that it has not yet been passed, to me, isn't an issue. I expect it to be passed very, very shortly. As a matter of fact, it makes more sense to me that they'd want to see the change in the exchange rate before they would pass an attempt to implement the hydrocarbon law. The other issue is the spike in the USD. I remember, I guess it was maybe 18 months ago, 2 years ago, when the value of the dinar started to drop. They were still utilizing the dollar, and a lot of our clients called. They were very despondent, and they said, oh, my gosh, I've put in all this time and money. The dinar is going in the wrong direction. And my argument to them, which I still hold to be the case, is that was because that was the last phase for the collection of the provisional 3-0 currency in country. It was done precisely so that they could collect that currency, not only from the citizenry, but hopefully from some of the nefarious organizations and individuals that were holding the 3-0 dinar in anticipation of reinstitution and to fund some of their nefarious activities. Now, we fast forward to now, and we see, again, a spike in the U.S. dollar. The reason we see a spike in the U.S. dollar is because the dollars are disappearing. Therefore, QED, they become more valuable until the dinar reinstitutes. So, on the one hand, we see the devaluation a couple of years ago was a bad sign when, in fact, it was a good sign. It was the collection of the 3 zeros. Now we see people upset that they see the increase of the dollar, which is a good thing because it means they're reducing the number of dollars in anticipation of eliminating their use altogether by January 1st. And that's why I say January looks like the drop-dead date for flipping the switch and reinstituting their currency. But let's talk a little bit about January 1st of 2024, because we're being told that they will only be utilizing the dinar. Well, we know that they have to continue, the government of Iraq has to continue to fund a 3-year budget and fund the HCL distributions to the citizens. Again, we know that they have signed a number of international contracts for their infrastructure, their electric grid, their water services, their roads, their new cities. And we know that the USD reserve doesn't even come close. It probably doesn't even represent 10% of the money, the contracts that they've signed, that they have to fulfill. Therefore, none of this, the funding of the 3-year budget, the HCL, and all of their international contracts for their infrastructure, none of this can be done at a program rate. Okay? That being the case, why have all of these other entities entered into international contracts for the rebuilding of the infrastructure? Well, there are only two possibilities. Either these international agencies are run by very stupid people, or, and this is my opinion, the parties of these contracts are operating with an undisclosed guarantee, not only regarding the fact that there will be a change in the exchange rate, but where they expect that exchange rate to fall. And that's why we're in the best position we have ever been in. Again, the arguments against it are the money supply, to me, doesn't work. Economic growth doesn't work. Corruption absolutely being dealt with. HCL is waiting for the exchange rate. I see nothing other than a possible Mid-East regional war started by Iran. I see nothing other than that could potentially postpone, because they're not going to stop it, potentially postpone what they would want to do. And again, that would only be possible if Iraq got involved. Now, Iran is, poking us in the eye. They're attacking American installations in Iraq. They're just doing nuisance things. Unfortunately, we have the wrong guy in the White House to deal with this. This wouldn't be happening under Trump, and it didn't happen under Trump because they knew that he was serious and he meant what he'd say. When he took Soleimani out, the Iranians understood clearly this was not a guy to mess with. They don't feel that way about Joe Biden, and rightfully so. I don't even want to get into that because it's too upsetting to see what's happened in this country in the last couple of years. The situation in the Middle East is just an example of the fracture that's been created, but that's another story. From our perspective, again, what we're interested in is the day that we get up, go to the bank, exchange our currency, provide for ourselves and our families. Now, because we at Trusts Unlimited happened to have invested in the Iraqi dinar years ago, we knew that most dinarians were middle-class, hardworking Americans who, for the first time in their life, were going to be dealing with a substantial amount of money. And so since we do estate planning work, since we work in litigation and things of this nature, we knew what you would be faced with. So we decided to construct a family asset protection trust package to protect your wealth, and in some cases even protect you from yourself. The fact that you just have not had the knowledge of how to manage a substantial amount of money. And, people like to say, oh, he's a wealthy guy, he doesn't work. Believe me, managing a substantial amount of wealth is not only a full-time job, it's a 24/7 job, and it can be very, very stressful. I recently got an article from someone that said that the highest levels of depression and even suicide are among the most wealthy. I don't know exactly why that's the case, but the point is that the fact that people have a lot of wealth doesn't mean that all of their problems go away. In fact, it means that some new additional problems that you hadn't anticipated have now arrived on the scene. But the trust package we've put together can help resolve a lot of these issues, and I want to walk through very briefly the benefits of this trust package. First, by establishing this trust package, you're going to preserve your privacy and your anonymity. That means the assets within this trust package are sealed, and no one's going to know your actual net worth or your estate and your holdings. But even more importantly for a denarian, it means that by assigning your pre-RV currencies, whether they're dinar or other currencies, to the trust, once they do revalue, no one will even know that you possess this wealth because the currencies would have been cloaked within the trust before they revalue and before you become a very wealthy individual. Second reason you'd want to establish this trust package, it's going to allow you to avoid IRS scrutiny. If you're holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computer will most likely spit out an audit. But with the magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. On the other hand, if your currencies have been assigned to the trust, then that revaluation will occur within the trust, meaning that should the IRS determine to do an audit, they will not be auditing you. They will be auditing the trust. But more importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit a trust, they can't do a 6-year audit, which is what they would do with you as an individual, for the simple reason that the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself, and that's going to be easily explained. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you plan on gifting currencies to family and friends. There are situations where you're hesitant to give these individuals a lump sum. However, if you gift the currencies to these individuals through our specially designed gift subtrust, and I know that we are the only firm that has this gift subtrust because I am the author of this gift subtrust. So if any other firm has this gift subtrust, they flat out stole it from us. Again, because I authored it. By gifting through this subtrust, you will not only avoid the federal gift tax because you've gifted pre-RV currencies, but you will be able to manage, invest, and distribute the money to these individuals through the gift subtrust. In other words, you will not only be able to gift them the currency pre-RV, you will have complete control of the post-RV proceeds. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow you to avoid the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. Once again, in order to pass your estate to heirs, you must go through the process of probate, which ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with the probate court. That could tie the estate up for years and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that estate would bypass the federal estate tax. But the balance in excess of that $10 million could be taxed as much as 65%. Now, this scenario is not only unacceptable, it's completely and totally avoidable, simply by establishing your family asset protection trust. By doing so, your estate will avoid the cost and delay of probate. No one will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. And in addition to that, because the assets were transferred through the estate, the federal estate tax is waived, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their respective inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits, one pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Now, what does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you actually own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. Quick example, you purchase 10 million dinar for $10,000. You transfer the currencies to the trust. They subsequently revalue for $1. So now you have $10 million in your trust. Can you be sued for $10 million? No. Why? Because the currencies were only worth $10,000 when you transferred them to the trust. And since that's all anyone could ever sue you for, and since civil suits are about monetary awards, the mere fact that you established the trust and assigned the pre-RV currencies to the trust eliminated the concern of litigation. Now, there is another post-RV issue. I refer to this as limited liability stop loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets. This is why we've established a package of trusts. This is why this is the best asset protection available domestically, bar none, and this is how it would work. Let's use the previous example. You purchased 10 million dinar for $10,000, transferred the currencies to the trust. I'm using a conservative number. They reinstituted at $1, so you have $10 million. Now that you have $10 million in trust, you make some purchases. A primary residence, a vacation home, a couple of rental properties, a couple of cars, a boat, maybe an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust, which constitutes the family and establishes the segregation of assets. Now, why is this important from an asset protection standpoint? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident. The accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards. And you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiff is left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts, of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And most importantly, because you've created a package of trusts and because your other assets are in those other subtrusts, they're protected from the civil litigation. Why? Because under the law, those separate subtrusts are separate legal entities or persons having nothing whatsoever to do with the accident in question, and the plaintiffs would have no standing to pursue them. So your family of trusts, this package worked very much the way a commercial barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your asset protection trust prior to the revaluation of these currencies. But whether you're a denarian or not, as an American citizen living in a country where we are witnessing many more rules, many more taxes, much more intrusion into our personal lives, this trust package is going to be indispensable for you moving into the future. As a matter of fact, I'm going to define the haves and the have-nots in the future as the people that have protected their wealth by establishing these kinds of trusts, and people that are flying blind, naked, without protecting their wealth. I'll just give you one example of how this could work. The 2024 election is going to be a pivotal election. If the Democrats win that election, and by that I mean retain the White House and the House and Senate, they are most certainly number one on their list, if not certainly one of the top three things on their list, is passage of their central bank digital currency, which is going to be basically 24/7 surveillance of all of your financial activities. However, there are states in the United States that have created their own digital currency. It's not a central bank currency, it's a state currency, because Constitution allows for this. Utilizing the trust, you'll be able to establish accounts in those states. You will have ATM cards and credit cards, so you'll be able to operate on a day-to-day basis as though your account was at a bank down the street rather than being at a bank in another state. In addition, you will enjoy the privacy of the fact that the assets are within your trust. And remember, if someone wants to sue you and pierce your trust, they're going to have to go to court and prove fraud. That's the same with the federal government. So you're going to be able to protect yourself from the government's best efforts to intrude into your personal affairs. This is another reason why you want to establish this trust package. Now, our trust is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV and financial assets like investment accounts, bank accounts, etc., post-RV, one optional gift subtrust if you intend on gifting currencies to family and friends and controlling the post-RV proceeds, and 8 additional subtrusts to hold physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with denarians, we knew that the price tag for that trust package was going to be unaffordable for too many denarians. So by simplifying the trust package, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. Pay us up front. We'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. That's not possible. We even have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the Iraqi dinar revalues globally, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. So with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their trust in force and their affairs in order pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be substantially less than what you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your trust in force and your affairs in order for all of the reasons that we've discussed here on this call. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to this call. It's a little shorter call. One of the reasons for that is I've been inundated with phone calls, texts, emails, and the like. I'm doing the best I can to keep up with it, but it's been a literal tsunami over the last couple of weeks. Unfortunately, I don't expect it to stop for the rest of this year, only because people that are paying attention understand why January is a real possibility for the reinstitution of the dinar for a number of reasons. So I'm going to go to the Q&A in just a moment here. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our trust package and why you should seriously consider contacting us to to get our initial no-obligation package. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I, too, have worked in these areas for over 40 years. I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 80 years' experience working precisely in these areas, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Why we got involved in this is very simple. Under our system of civil procedure, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them or lose them outright. And there are things you can do to avoid this risk. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death, and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are, of course, investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances under our system of civil procedure is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, but particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you anticipate a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV, as we understand them. Now, if you'd like to get our initial no-obligation package, we'll be happy to send it to you. It does contain everything you need should you wish to establish your family asset protection trust package, but you're under no obligation to do so. You can review the package, contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. There will be no consultation fee. Again, if you then decide to proceed, everything you need to do so will be included in that package. You can request our package by contacting us either by email or by phone. Our email address is trustsunlimitedllc.com. Excuse me, that's incorrect. It's trustsunlimitedllc@gmail.com. That's trustsunlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. You can contact us either by email or phone. If you call us by phone, just leave your email address. In either case, we will get our initial package out to you immediately. It has a lot of information about us, about trusts, about the currencies, about the process. Review it. Contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. Well, we have some questions here in the Q&A. So our first caller is area code 732. That's 732. Go ahead.
Good day, sir. This is John. I got one quick question, please. You mentioned on the previous week call your opinion about foreign currency you recommend besides dinar. And to make it clear, you said one of them was Bolivia Bolivar. And I want to know, what do you think? Yeah, Bolivia Bolivar, you said. Is that correct?
Yes, and I do not have Bolivar, and I do not know a lot about it. But with all the people I speak to, some people seem to like that currency. To be honest with you, I don't really know about it. I myself have Iraqi dinar, Vietnamese dong, the Indonesian rupiah, and I have some Zim. I do not have the Bolivar. I do not have any real, and for my own reasons, I wouldn't possess the real. Incidentally, for those that do have the real might be in trouble now if the international community follows through, because given what Iran has been doing, their currency, the IMF, the UN, should not reward them by allowing that currency to increase in value globally.
Last question, please. I'm stuck. Long ago, I bought Venezuela Boulevard. I'm deciding if I should sell it and go for dinar. Is that any good, Venezuela Boulevard? Will it RV in the future?
Once again, I can't comment on that specific one, but with regard to the Iraqi dinar, I bought the last 2 weeks. I've bought dinar, and I'm actually going to buy more dinar when we get off the phone.
I want to tell everybody the best price is at Citibank, $880 per million. Thank you. Thank you there, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Well, maybe that was a Citibank employee, but it doesn't matter. 880 at Citibank, I might have to give them a call. Our next caller is area code 785. That's 785. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jim, it's Tom in Kansas, and
yes,
I
sir.
was listening to Fox News yesterday, and you said a little bit about it in the opening about Iran and the attacks on our installations in Iraq. And Blinken was there talking to Sadani about that. And when that meeting was concluded, Fox News said that Sadani went to Iran to talk to them. And this is what really startled me is they said that Sadani, the prime minister, actually praised Hamas for what they were doing. And I thought, what's going on there? Did you hear that, or did you have any comment on that?
I did not hear that, and that's unfortunate if that's the case. But my answer is going to be a selfish one, and it's this. At this point in time, after the years that I personally have been involved in this personally and professionally, along with all the Denarians, all of our clients, I'm just going to say it. I just want to go to the bank and exchange my currency. The Middle East is on fire. It's been on fire all my life. It doesn't seem like anything is going to be resolved anytime soon. So from my perspective, I just hope that Iraq and Iran get along to the point where Iraq can proceed with its economic reforms, with its monetary reforms, with the reinstitution of their currency, and somehow, some way, until the leadership in the United States changes, Iran is no longer intimidated. And as a matter of fact, you mentioned the surprise you had with Soudani's remark. Well, look what's going on American campuses in the streets of our cities. I mean, I was shocked by the level of anti-Semitic rhetoric, particularly on the, right after what happened in Israel. Basically, 1,400 people were slaughtered in their beds on the Sabbath. So that doesn't seem to bother a lot of people. And to be that obtuse about it, it just comes from a place of hate. And it's really unfortunate that it exists in the world, but it does. And, when you're a kid, you think you can change the world. No, you can't. It changes in its own time frame. It takes decades and even longer than that for change, for evolution and all of that. I'm in my 70s. I don't have time to fix the world. I can't fix it anyway. So to be honest with you, and again, this is selfish, I just want to go to the bank, exchange my currency, provide for my family and friends and the charitable organizations. That's all I can do to help that little piece of world where I have some influence.
I agree on the protests in this country. I can't understand it. They're all pro-Hamas. And this ain't the first rodeo that Hamas has done to Israel. They've lobbed bombs on them. How many times? They start it and do all the killing, and then our protests and our media blames Israel and the protests. And they're Hamas is the ones that started. I just don't get it. But I was just concerned from the Sadani standpoint that hopefully he's not been corrupted and we got another Maliki started or something like that. But I'm just hoping that he, I got faith in him right now. But I didn't like to hear that. But maybe he was just going along to get along, and they won't pay no attention to it.
He may be anti-Israel, but he's pro-Iraq, and that's our major concern at this time.
Right.
For the purpose of this discussion. The other thing I'll mention is a lot of these protesters are young people, and they've been marinated in a political system where everybody is either an oppressor or an oppressed. So once they define Israel as the oppressor and define the Palestinians as the oppressor is always the bad guy, whether they're an oppressor or not, or whether they're a bad guy or not. That is the shoehorn that they've been using to put them in, and that's where they're coming from. I have some youngsters in my own family that come to me. They're not anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, but again, they're friends, they're contemporaries, so they come to me, hey, Grandpa, hey, Uncle, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing that, what's your answer? And I basically explain that, and that's the prism that they see everything through. But my response is, if that's the prism you want to see everything through, every single race has been the oppressed or the oppressor historically. Every single area of the world, other people lived there, and then other people migrated to those areas, and the people that were there first had a prior claim, and the other people said, no, that we have a higher, better use for the land. I mean, it's just history. As I'll give you another example. They complain that the Spanish came over and they 25 million Indians were killed because they didn't have an immune system to deal with the illnesses. And that's true. But it's also true that we had the Black Plague in Europe because it came from the Far East. So everyone has been, unfortunately, the perpetrator and the victim historically. It's just, that's the way it is. So when people try to pick an arbitrary date and say, well, these are the good people forever and these are the bad people forever, it doesn't work historically.
I got one last quick question, and it's about gifting. I got a couple of brothers that are, one's 80, one's 79. Okay, so for lack of better thinking, the time is not on their side. I want them to, if I gave them, for example, $100,000 and it went at 3-to-1, they had $300,000. Let them pay $150,000 tax, and then let them take the other $50,000 and go have fun. I know that might sound stupid, but if I decided to do that, do you have a template or a form that I would need in order to gift them a gifting letter to do that?
Well, of course, we have in our files, we have a standard gift letter, but there's a special gifting letter if you're using the gift subtrust. People apply for our trust package. The gift subtrust is an option. They either want to establish it or not. If they establish the gift subtrust, when they get their completed trust documents, included in that is the gift subtrust with the specific gift letter that's necessary for the gift subtrust. The other thing is you want to give them $300,000. They have $150 left. Another thing you can do is, what are they going to earn on $150? Say 5%. Well, what's that? $7,500. You might be better off just gifting them $15,000 every year for the rest of their life, and they probably end up on a net basis with more money annually.
That's what I thought too. Yeah, I thought about that. So the gifting letter within the gift subtrust, I can use to do what I just discussed with you.
Yeah. Well, if you establish the gift subtrust, you need to use the gift letter we've established for it. If you're merely going to gift them currencies pre-RV, we have a gift letter for that. If you're just going to give them an income flow post-RV, you don't need a letter to do either of those things.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Us. Okay? Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Bye now. Certainly. Okay, our next caller is area code 832. That's 832. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim. One of your customers, David, in Texas.
Yes, sir.
And I was hoping maybe you could shed some light on, the CBI has their rate set at, 1310, and then we've
Something
got
like
the
that.
parallel market, black market, that is trading up as high as 1,600 to 1,700 this week. They say it's illegal. CBI says that's illegal. We know the RV would fix the problem because it would go on Forex, but I don't understand why they can't why they're not cracking down on the, the black market and get that rate, closer to where it's supposed to be.
Well, because thieves do what thieves do. They've arrested hundreds of people. They've sanctioned banks. They've shut down exchange companies. But there are people that just trying to make the quick buck. But the other point is this. The reason the rate can be that high is because the number of dollars available is dwindling. So that's not unexpected. One of the reasons why, in my opinion, they're never going to come out and say, we are going to reinstitute our currency at whatever it is on January 5th of 2024. Because if they give you a hard time frame, all of the people, the arbitrage folks, all of the people, the scammers and all of that, when they have a drop-dead date, then, that just gives them time to misbehave. What I think they're going to do is do whatever they can to reduce the supply of dollars, which will necessarily increase the value of the dollar. And then one day they're just going to announce the change in the rate, and then those dollars are going to, be worthless.
Okay. All right. I appreciate your insight.
And the other point is this. Remember, January 1st, the dollar cannot be used at all.
I know. I just hope that doesn't get, Iraq likes to we knew how they moved the dates around. I hope that's solid. That would be great.
Yeah, it's the Eastern culture. A drop-dead date isn't really a drop-dead date. It's the date to renegotiate. It's just
exactly. Okay.
I mean, look, a perfect example is Israel. I mean, they had the land for peace deal with Gaza and the West Bank in 2005. 2006, they elect the Hamas. Hamas immediately says there'll never be any more elections. Then they violate the ceasefire in 2012. They violate the ceasefire in 2014. Then we have October 7th, and Israel said, okay, that's the third violation of the ceasefire. So they go in there and start kicking Hamas's behind, and now everyone wants a ceasefire. Well, no, you had a ceasefire. You broke it. It's, it's crazy. So that's why I say I just want to go to the bank, exchange my currency, and get the hell out of Dodge.
I think you got a bunch of people with you.
Okay. You take care.
Thank you. All right.
Sure. Bye-bye. Our next caller is area code 715. That's 715.
So my name's Alan, and I've just been listening to your conference call today, and a friend of mine referred me to you. But for the family packages, I had emailed you about information just a little bit ago. But I was wondering, do you have more than just the family packages? And are they all revocable or irrevocable or stuff like that?
Right. Well, revocable trusts are statutory, meaning they're regulated on a state-by-state basis. So unless you're in the state of Tennessee, we cannot assist you with a revocable trust. You should go to your local bar if you want a revocable trust. An irrevocable trust like ours is valid in all 50 states, so we can market it in all 50 states. That's basically the difference between the two. Now, a revocable trust is basically established in order for your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate, the federal estate tax, but it doesn't provide the privacy or asset protection, whereas our trust does all of that. And again, it's available it's valid in all 50 states.
Okay. And then on top of that, then with the irrevocable trust, I'll say if I were to try to set one up with you today and it revalued tomorrow, trying to do a pre-revalue trust, and it would revalue in the meantime before it was finished, would that then become a post-revalue trust instead of a pre?
If you purchase a trust from us, we have your application and we have your money. but the currency revalues before we send you. Once we send you your trust and the deal's a deal, we will refund your money. If you've applied and paid for a trust with us and you do not receive that trust before the currency revalues, the trust is still valid. You still have the many benefits, although you have lost some of the benefits. We can't control when it revalues. We just tell people, if you understand why you need to set up a trust, don't wait to the 11th hour. Get it done now. But again, if you apply today, you get your the currency of revalues on next Monday, and you get your trust on Tuesday, you get a refund.
Okay. And I know you guys are pretty backed up from the sounds of it and everything like that. I mean, what is your lead time on those right now?
Ordinarily, it's 3 days. Right now, it's probably about 5 to 7 days because we're just getting slammed. As a matter of fact, the attorneys even asked Jim, why are you even doing the Wednesday calls? And, I said, because it's not just marketing the trust. We're sharing information with existing clients, and they're like, okay, right, that you're correct. That makes sense. So from a marketing standpoint, in my opinion, this thing's done in January. Now that they've said that the only currency that they can use is the dinar, they're going to be bankrupt if they don't change the exchange rate.
No, totally agree. And I guess, like I said, I did email you while you're doing your call here about more information on the family package trust and everything. And I know I'm going to have a million questions. So, I guess I look forward to speaking with you here hopefully in the future.
I will do two things. I will send you the package, and after I send it, immediately upon sending it, I will call you back.
Sounds good. Well, I really appreciate that. As for now, that's all I have for questions, and I appreciate your time.
Just a sec. I'm writing down your phone number here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I left it in my email also.
Okay, well, just in case you didn't, I wrote that down. So, again, I will get that package out to you this afternoon, and I'll click send, and then I will call you and say, hey, this is Jim with Trusts Unlimited. Just want to let you know I sent the package to you. I'll answer any questions you have at that time, and then after reviewing the package, you may have more questions. If you can't get me on the phone, it's hard to do. You can email me your questions because I can just sit there at night and just answer the emails.
Perfect.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye now. Our next caller is area code 80. Oops. I'm sorry, Mike. 801. That's 801. Go ahead. Is that Clay?
It is. How are you, Jim?
Hey, Clay. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. You said a couple of things that I thought about. One is you're not the only one who agrees that the drop-dead date is January 1st. And I asked this question. What if they don't revalue by that date? What happens to the dinar if they can no longer use the dollar in Iraq?
When I say drop-dead date, what I really mean is they've positioned themselves where if they don't do it, they're in trouble. The USD the USD money they possess is not anywhere near the amount of money they need to fund a 3-year budget or the international contracts that they've signed off on. It's not even close. It's like me buying a $100,000 house, not having a job and not having any money to put down on the house, but saying that I do. It's not. At some point, they're going to foreclose. So this is the problem. They've either got to reinstitute their currency, or all their contracts are going to be null and void, and they'll basically be bankrupt. They can't they can't even fund their budget.
That's what I think as well. They cannot function in a program rate. Because right now, they're obviously using the USD or doing whatever they're doing over there to stay afloat. But they cannot function without revaluating that currency because nobody's going to take their programmed currency. No one's going to take it.
Right.
And not only that, I would think inflation would go through the roof as well at the same time.
Well, in a sense, the rise in the dollar is inflationary because inflation is really the loss of purchasing power. The dollars are drying up. That's the other thing. The dollars are drying up. They just
Correct.
don't have. Now they are getting other currencies, but other countries are doing the same because the hegemony of the USD is over, and Biden is anxiously hammering the last nail in the U.S. Dollar as a global currency. The BRICS nations is growing, and more countries are entering the BRICS, and that's absolutely designed to eliminate the USD or any single nation's currency as the primary global currency. So they're going to all be regional. They're all going to use their own currencies. Now, Iraq is going to do that as well, but it's simply not enough. It's just not enough. They have to have their own currency. Now, maybe they're foolish enough, or the corrupt people are able to postpone it, but it's just going to hurt the country.
Right, I agree with that.
And Soudani has repeatedly made promises, and if he doesn't keep them, he's done.
That's right. They're not going to be able to enter the BRICS organization with a program rate. They're not going to accept that. The other thing about that I have a question on is that Basel III compliance. Does that apply to every nation in the world, regardless of whether they're in the BRICS organization or not?
We're at Basel IV now, and yes, it applies to the nations. Now, I assume a nation can refuse to comply, but then who's going to do business with them?
Okay, by these countries going into the BRICS, is it going to affect the Basel requirement?
No, in my opinion, it won't. And if a country wants to trade globally and they're not Basel compliant, meaning that the currency is not backed by a sufficient amount of assets, with each Basel's 5 phase, we're at 4. With each new phase, there's a higher commodity backing they need percentage-wise for their currency. So if a country is not Basel IV compliant, then who's going to trade with them? Because their currency is only worth what they say it's worth, not what they can prove is sound money. It's backed by gold, silver, industrial metals, real estate, whatever, oil. If it's not commodity backed, it's why would I do business with someone that's using monopoly money when I can do business with their neighbor? It's got a backed currency.
Right. That makes sense.
This is going to hurt China more than it's going to hurt us. The USD is on a slow leak, but China has enriched itself by artificially devaluing its currency to corner the trade market. They can't do that anymore. Right. China's economically in trouble. They're strong militarily, and they're making a lot of noise, and we're asleep at the wheel because Biden doesn't even know what day it is.
That's why they're looking at the BRICS organization to revive or become their savior.
Yeah, they have those other reserve currencies, but again, they just can't go to them and say, "Gee, I need $1 trillion in reserve." No, that's not how it works. So, in my opinion, they're in a corner. They've got to reinstitute their currency, or they're not going to survive economically.
So, as an example, we all want this thing to reinstate. But you said many times you don't want it to happen at the end of a quarter. So ideally, the best time for them to do it in our behalf would be the 1st of January. But if they do it in the first of the year, how long can they live? How long do you think they can go without reevaluating that currency, knowing they can no longer use the USD? Is it immediate?
I'd say, based on the USD that they have, and based on the other thing that is working for them is they are producing more oil, and they do have an income stream. But again, that's like saying, well, I'm living on my paycheck. All right, I don't have any savings. I don't have any, anything put away for a rainy day. I'm just living on my paycheck, and that's not going to work either, because there's all kinds of unforeseen things that can occur. So it's not economically feasible situation, which is why our country's in trouble. We've got $33 trillion in debt. But that's the Keynesian model that came along after World War. I'd say more in the 60s, which is basically debt oriented, and it's run its course. You can't keep borrowing money to pay the interest on money that you borrowed.
Right.
And it's unfortunate, but we're getting into a whole thing about when we give money to foreign nations and then it flows back to these politicians through their charitable organizations, and their nonprofits and all. I mean, that's how the Clintons got rich. They left the office. They were worth $800,000. Now their net worth's $225 million through the Clinton Foundation. Well, if you do your research on that, it's absolutely scary what they've gotten away with. And it's not just them, but that's just the best example of someone that's gotten paid for doing nothing, absolutely nothing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And most people would try to get away with it if they could. I get that. There's a different set of standards for the rich opposed to us regular lay people. But to further that gentleman's question about Soudani, who went over to Iran and who praised Hamas or whatever they're doing, they all have a belief. There's different divisions of that belief. But I truly do not believe that Soudani is so stupid as to drag himself into a war that he doesn't want. Not only that, I think Iran is doing nothing but posturing. There's been over 10,000 people killed in Palestine simply because of the air raids that the Israelis are doing. If they were going to do something, they'd have done it by now.
Well, I think that what may have happened is they may have overplayed their hand and not thought Israel was going to say, okay, this is the third time you've broken the ceasefire and you butchered 1,400 Israelis in their beds on the Sabbath, so no more Mr. Nice Guy. I don't think they anticipated that response.
No, they didn't.
That's why. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So
what was the other thing?
I think what Soudani is doing, I think Soudani is trying to play nice with Iran because they know that Iran can create problems in country, with the militias and all of that. So I really do think Soudani is focused on Iraq, and he says and does things which, at the very least, don't hurt Iraq's progress. That's the way I read that. But well, like I said, at this point, I just reinstate the currency and let's go to the bank.
They've said 1 million times already, we will not allow another country to come in here and use us as their springboard to create wars in other countries. And that goes for the Iranians, too. They're not going to allow those insurgencies to come in because that would cause a problem with the U.S. So Sudan is not going to let that happen. They're already trying to get all of the foreign military out of their country because their military is strong enough now to defend Iraq. So that's why that's all happening. China's not going to get involved with the thing. Like you said, they're having problems with their money flow as it is. They want Iraq to do well. They want to see the Silk Road Initiative go through. So all your major powers, China, the U.S., Russia, they're going to sit back and they're going to talk a lot of crap, but nothing's going to happen with this small problem we have with Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah. All of those countries are supported by all of those terrorists are supported by one country, and that's Iran. And that's not going to happen.
Well, I'll tell you something else. This morning, my nephew, who is very high up with a security company here in the United States, is on a plane right now to Baghdad, and we're putting non-military security companies in there to help protect certain U.S. installations in country. So, they're going to put the clamps on Iran in Iraq. And, of course, Israel is going to have to put the clamps on Hamas. Not only Hamas, but you have Hezbollah in Syria. You have the Houthis in Yemen. So these are all proxies for Iran. And unfortunately, the way to deal with Iran is to deal directly with Iran. It's kind of cowardly to send someone else out to do your dirty work, So we'll just have to see. But again, I want peace in the Middle East. I want everyone to get along. Everyone wants all of that. But I also, selfishly, for myself, for my family, for the charitable organizations I'd like to work with, I want to go to the bank, exchange my currency. I picked up more currency in the last few weeks. I've got some things I want to do. I'm not a young guy, so I don't have a whole lot of time to do it. And I just want all of this to end, and I just want to, and everyone does. We all want to move on.
I couldn't agree with you more, Jim. Thanks for your time, my friend.
Sure. Take care, Clay. Bye-bye now. Our next caller is area code 405. That's 405. Go ahead.
Hello, Jim. This is Doug. in Oklahoma City.
Yes, sir.
I was listening to the initial presentation. I got called away, and now I'm back on. But I apologize if I am stepping on a question that was already asked. You mentioned the drop-dead date of January 1st. Just simply, do you anticipate that drop-dead date to mean that it has to happen before that, or that it would happen soon after that?
I'm saying that it could very well happen before that, but if it doesn't, it will have to happen soon thereafter, because they just can't function with 125 billion USD reserve. That's not enough money to fund anything that they're committed to. So they're either going belly up, they're going to try to utilize other currencies, but again, you just can't go to someone and say, "Hey, give me some of your money." There has to be, a fair value exchange. So I just don't see any other way. I see no plausible solution other than reinstituting and revaluing their currency. I see no other way the numbers work without reinstituting.
Other than the fact that they may take a pause on that, absolute drop-dead date is for the U.S. dollar. You think there's any probability they would do that?
Well, January 1st is when they stop using the dollar domestically. That doesn't mean the federal government there in Iraq can use it for international contracts and for funding certain things domestically. The government can do that. But again, they just don't have sufficient. I mean, if I do the math, maybe they could hang on for a year, but that would make no sense at all. And then Sudani would look like a liar. He's telling people, hold on to your currency; it's going to have value soon. Just be patient. The increase in the value of the dollar in the black markets, because the dollars are dwindling, these citizens won't have any purchasing power. They can't use the dollar. They can't live on the dinar at a program rate. So he's destroying the citizens. As a matter of fact, if they don't proceed, I think there's going to be a no confidence vote in the parliament, and they'll remove him. They'll have to.
Yeah,
they got to get the job done.
Yeah, whoever gets in power never wants that to happen. Their gravy train is over. One last comment on the Iranian scenario. I think that Iran and the people of Hamas actually thought that there was going to be a sort of a universal support and uprising with active participation with many different countries, especially countries like Saudi Arabia and so on and so forth. I just listened to a speech by whatever he is that rules the country, and they were talking about the accord that was just about to be signed with Israel. And he just stated, in fact, it was just yesterday, that he said that is paused, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen.
No, I think, to be honest with you, I think what Iran has done with its proxies is an act of desperation, because they know that the balance of power totally shifts. The difference is Israel does not want the elimination of the nation state of Iran and all Iranians. It's Iran that wants the absolute elimination of the state of Israel and all Israelis. So, people go back and forth about the history and who's the bad guy, but that's where we are today. One side wants the other side to not exist. It's no more complicated than that. And again, I don't know what. One of the things the international community could do, of course, Biden is trying to play nice with Iran and Biden ought to just slap all the sanctions back on him. I mean, the only reason they're doing this is because he didn't enforce the sanctions on the sale of their oil, and they picked up $90 to $100 billion, and now they're flush with money so they can fund all these, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. Now they're getting the money from Iran. So it's just, Biden's true to form. He's never gotten anything right in terms of foreign policy. His own people say so. I've never seen anyone that has a 50-50 shot getting it wrong every time. He's just bad news for domestically and in terms of foreign policy. This country is in absolute chaos right now. You know, the open border, I mean, everything. It's a mess. And I just don't know how this is going to be resolved with the leadership we have. So we'll just have to see.
One of the issues is that I think, the initiation of this was to be able to create a situation of emergency in the Middle East, which always adds about a 20 to 30% price premium on oil, and it hasn't happened. And there have been voices in this country that says they believe that oil is going to $150 a barrel. And
I've heard higher than that.
Yeah, and I think that is a precursor to what they want it to happen, because that will force even greater burden on the middle class. But on the other side of it, you know that there is a flotilla of oil tankers headed for the United States right now, because we are at the peak of oil exportation that we've been in 20 years. 4.4 million barrels a day is leaving the United States, which is making up for the so-called shortfall that OPEC is trying to enforce along with Russia. So from that perspective, one of the goals, I think, for this insurgency was to create a oil catastrophe, which would then put accelerated income into Iran's hands and others, who basically would be able to almost double the price that they're getting for their barrels of oil. And it's not happening.
But that could only happen if the United States decides this course of reducing substantially our own production of oil. The solution to the problem, what Ronald Reagan did, basically he made Russia broke. He built up our military. He produced oil. He did all of these things, and he just strangled them. He didn't have to fire a shot. He just, they were broke, and we could do the same thing. But either Biden is too stupid to do it, or he has another agenda. Of course, I don't think Biden has any agenda. I think Biden is, he's just an Obama sock puppet. So he just, he says it all the time. He goes out there to talk, and he says, well, I don't know if they'll let me talk about this or that. And there's 20 press people sitting there, and not one of them stands up ever in 2.5 years and says, sir, you're the president. Who's telling you to do anything?
Right.
It's just what we're dealing with. We have the worst leadership at the worst time, and but don't get me started, okay? Because our attorneys will get mad.
Well, back to the first issue that dropped it, as usual, especially with the confusion that comes with the holiday season, if we go past the 1st of December, I hope that nothing happens until after January.
Absolutely not. Well, that's always been my position. When we get near the end of a quarter, I don't want to see it.
Right.
I want January, anytime in January, that's great, because we can hold the currency if it's a low float. We don't have to worry about taxes till April. There's some confusion about what the actual tax status is. We can compel the IRS to tell us. We're in control. We're in a very good position. We've waited this long. We can wait a couple of more months.
I think that December 15th is pretty much would be the same equivalent of December 31st. Nothing's going to happen after that, so we really only have until about, just a few more days in this month to give us 30 days to do anything, and I would much rather see it happen in January myself.
Well, anyway. If someone told me it's going to happen on December 31st, I wouldn't be happy about it because of the timing, but I'd say, okay, we got to get to work. This is what we got. We got to go to the bank. We got to do our exchange. We're going to have to pay the ordinary income tax and file for a refund based on certain sections of the code we've discussed, and that's what we're going to have to do. I won't like it, but it is what it is. And if people are concerned about the taxes, what they're going to net, we'll buy more currency. If you think it's going to happen, and you can afford to, buy more currency. That's what I'm doing.
Very good. Jim, as always, thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Okay, take care now. Bye-bye. Okay, our Next caller is area code 763. That's 763. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim, it's your good friend Monty Python from Minnesota. How are you doing today?
Yes, sir. How are you?
Good. Thanks for asking. My friend that asked a question earlier, the 715, I'm the one that referred him, and he got busy, and he's in a loud area, and he wanted me to ask a question that basically you just finished about taxes. And obviously you've shared with your clients many times. You know, there's a lot of people that are like myself was until I met you, that wanted to pay, bring in dinars a couple at a time for, say, until you're ready, you know, to cash in a large amount. But could you, he's listening, could you share in details as to the tax codes and potential ramifications of that? And kind of like what you said with the previous caller, there's some discrepancies in the tax code and what you will be sending off once this revalues, for clarification for him and for probably other people that are on this call too.
Well, first of all, I'll point to Section 988E2 of the Internal Revenue Code. The last sentence in that says, if the profit that you would realize from the exchange of a currency exceeds $200, you must pay the tax. What that means is the taxable event isn't the date of the exchange. The taxable event is the increase in the value, number one. Now, Publication 525 of the Internal Revenue Code refers to the profit as cap gain. However, you can't rely on a publication. You have to go to the code. The code is unclear about the cap gain. It refers to the cap gain in certain options, currency options trading, but there's I can't find anything that clearly says if you have a currency that's a sanctioned currency that's worth literally nothing and it revalues, it's subject to cap gain. It doesn't. I can't find that anywhere. So what does that leave us with? It leaves us with treating it as ordinary income unless we can get the IRS to confirm in writing what the tax is. And we can't get that in a timely fashion if the revaluation occurs in the last month of a quarter, because taxes would be due on the 15th day of the first month of the next quarter. So that's why if a revaluation in January is optimal for us, we don't have to worry about taxes for calendar year 2023. We don't have to worry about quarterly taxes till April 15th of 2024, which gives us plenty of time to ascertain what the tax is. But if we're unable to do that, we're going to have to pay the ordinary income tax and file for a refund, I would cite 988E2, Section 643A and B, Publication 525, all those things. We will make that information available once the thing reinstitutes.
Great. Thank you very much for that clarification, and maybe add at the end, for the people that are not educated like us, what would happen if they don't pay that tax the 15th of the following quarter? It revalues if they're dinars in a trust or not.
Well, I feel that there's a chance we have tax deferral if the exchange happens within an irrevocable trust. But again, I would not rely on that because the penalty is 100%. So let's say you had 5 million dinar and you got $1 for it. That's $5 million. Okay, your tax bracket's 39.6. Then you have the 5% millionaire surtax. That puts you at 44.6. 100% penalty puts you at, 89%. So you basically got wiped out because you didn't pay a tax. It's better off to pay the
and
ordinary
for state income tax.
Even though it absolutely sucks, because you might have to exchange the currency at a lower rate than you want to, and then you're paying a tax in order to pay a tax that might not be due. But again, if we're wrong, 100% penalty kills you. It just wipes you out. So, we have to deal with two groups that are going to be disagreeable, the banks and the IRS. There's no way around it. So the best solution is an RV in the first half, preferably the first month of any given quarter. That gives us plenty of wiggle room.
Awesome. Thanks for the clarification. And again, great call, Jim.
Thanks a lot. Thanks very much. Bye-bye now. Okay, our next caller is area code 312. That's 312. Go ahead.
Really? Oh my goodness! What's up, Jim? How are you?
You know, I'm in the weeds. It's serious over here. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have a life anymore. I tell you.
I'm looking at this call. We're an hour and 25 minutes in. I'm like, good grief.
I know. You know, I've been doing this for so long. It's you know, it gets to the point where I sometimes I really don't want to do the call, but then, you know, I mean, I'm supposed to be part-time because I only do one call a week, but it's all of the, you know, I mean, my phone's blowing up. It's you know, I've got at least, I'd say, 30 phone calls to return today.
I believe you.
So when I
believe you.
You know, and that doesn't count the ones that'll keep coming in as I'm returning those 30.
Right. So
yeah,
my question is pertaining to your contacts. Okay. Now, You've got contacts in Iraq. You've got Treasury contacts. Do you have banking contacts?
Yes.
You do. All right. Now, what do you call these people? Gurus, yeah. Other gurus are saying any day, tomorrow, 2 days, and so on and so forth. Do you ever get information from your banking contacts and your other contacts that says different?
No. I mean, no. They don't tell me. No one tells me it's going to happen tomorrow. Nobody. They may say it could happen before January 1st or after January. You know, there's a window where they have to get it done in order to be financially feasible, things like that. But no one, in all the years I've done this, none of my contacts have ever said it's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen next week.
I was just wondering because we have that going on, and it's always
one of the reasons why they might drop it on us, though, is because they don't want to. They can't give us an absolute date because the speculators, you know what I'm saying? They I think they're going to drop it. Like I said on the call, could it happen before January 1st? Yes, it could. After January, the clock is ticking because, like I said, they painted themselves in the corner. The dollar is no longer in use. You can't get it from an ATM machine. You can't use it to exchange a good or service because the purveyor, the business can't do anything with it, you know, except exchange it for dinar. And they're not supposed to be able to transact after January 1st. So, I mean, what's left?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Until they, after January 1st and until they reinstate their currency, the citizens of Iraq will be operating with the currency in a program rate. Well, you can't live with that. You can't live with it. It has no purchasing power. Okay? It's like 1930s Germany, you know, or excuse me, after World War I, the German, you know, the Reichsmark, and, you know, was ridiculous, 300% inflation, crazy. That's what's going to happen. They you know, Soudani, if he doesn't deliver, he's done. They're a parliamentary system. There'll be a no confidence vote, and he'll be gone.
All right. Well, I appreciate your call. I appreciate your time. Say hi to the professor, and have a good, busy day.
Thanks so much, I think. Take care.
All right, Jim. See you. Take care.
Bye-bye now. Well, this was our last caller for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to our call. The things we've discussed here are of interest. I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. You can you can contact us by email, trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC at gmail.com, or our phone service 307-274-4122. Our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and have a great week. Bye-bye now.